Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to each of you for coming. Your expertise brings a lot to our committee. The FAA has banned the commercial flight of supersonic aircraft in this country. This ban was found in a regulation that was promulgated back in 1973, so some 45 years ago. And today, in 2018, commercial aircraft travel no faster than they did 50 years ago, in part as a result of this. And significantly, the Concorde, the heavy, clunky, supersonic commercial aircraft that was in use at the time the regulation was promulgated, has been grounded today, in part as a result of those regulations. But when we look at this today, we realize that there are some companies that have developed technologies using stronger, lighter materials that could achieve a greater degree of fuel efficiency. Perhaps most importantly, there are some companies that have developed technologies that they claim can result in commercial-grade supersonic travel that is 30 times quieter than the Concorde was. And this seems like an example of the problem we face when regulations don't keep pace with current technology. And so, Dr. West, I'd like to ask you a question about this. What do you think some of the benefits to the United States might be from supersonic travel? And is this something that, that you think we ought to continue to stick to? Is it time for Congress to revisit this idea of banning overland supersonic commercial travel?
I think there's been so much innovation over the last 40 years that any regulation from 40 years ago deserves another look, because I remember when the Concorde was flying, there was concern at the time about sonic booms, and that was annoying people on the ground, and so that was one of the reasons that created a complication there. But I would not be surprised if the manufacturers have figured out ways to handle that, that there are noise abatement procedures that would make a difference. So we certainly need to constantly take a look at regulations. We need to move into what I would call smart regulation, which basically is well-designed and focuses on specific problems.
And just because I find this area interesting, I would note in response to your observation, it is my understanding that the sonic boom is somewhat analogous to the wake that travels behind a boat or a ship. And just as the size and the shape and the materials used in a boat or a ship can affect the type of wake it casts, there are ways of diminishing the impact of the sonic boom, and that's yet another reason why we ought to revisit this nearly half-century-old regulation that is really out of date. In the coming years, we're going to see the deployment of 5G technology. 5G wireless networks are going to revolutionize all sorts of things, but they require the deployment of a large number of small antenna systems, somewhat different from our current cell phone networks. The dawn of the 5G era brings a whole lot of opportunities in the way we will travel, in the offering of things like telemedicine, in the travel of autonomous vehicles, both on the land and in the air, in drone use, and in greater connectivity generally. Dr. Furchtgott-Roth, I'd like to ask you, these benefits can be impeded by government regulations that could stop the deployment of this technology. Is our current regulatory framework prepared to handle these challenges, the challenges associated with the deployment of a 5G network?
Senator, it's a very good question. A lot of people are very concerned about the deployment of 5G technologies and, in fact, are concerned about whether regulation will get in the way. I think at the federal level, and I would say even at the state level, that most people in government are trying to take great efforts to be sure that there are not impediments to the deployment of the new technologies. There are a handful of municipalities around the country that want to create new regulations on the siting of towers, or in the case of 5G networks, it's not going to be towers. It's just going to be a tiny little box that can stick on the side of a building. And so I think there's some concern that municipalities may be impeding the deployment. We'll have to see.
Okay, thank you. I see my time's expired, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator